We've spent a whole month in Natlan, enough to get a really good feel for it. It's still early days of course, but for me, what stood out the most so far is just how often it has surprised me. And I don't mean things like plot twists, fundamental changes, or anything all that drastic. It's just that in so many smaller ways, things are just a little different to what I've come to expect from Genshin. None of the other regions felt like this. Let's talk through what we've seen so far, with extra focus on those parts which have been slightly unexpected. Right from the moment I took my first steps into Natlan, I found it absolutely stunning. We had already seen what it looked like in the trailers of course, but there's just something fundamentally different to exploring a world for yourself. I've always felt that Genshin's world design has slowly improved over time, with ever more impressive landscapes filled with more engaging puzzles to solve and mysteries to discover, and for me Natlan has definitely continued that trend. The central region's dramatic canyons are even more beautiful than I'd expected, each tribe's home turf is more distinctive, and the stadium, which I had been unsure of based on the trailers, is a hit for me. The music especially is fantastic. I seem to feel this every time, but this might be my favorite Genshin music. The battle music in particular is just a jam. One thing, which I guess was pretty much inevitable and yet somehow still surprised me, was that Hoyo created these gorgeous, cute dinosaurs and decided that we do indeed have to fight and kill them. This trend started with the fungi in Sumeru, and I thought it couldn't possibly get any worse after they forced us to fight the adorable blubber beasts in Fontaine. In case it wasn't obvious enough from my username, I love dinosaurs. Having to fight the saurians just feels so wrong. The Abyss especially was just a kick in the guts. They made us hurt the babies! Some people find it silly to empathize with pixel animals, but I really can't help it. I just have to pretend they're more like Pokemon, fighting for fun and going to rest in a pocket dimension after they've had enough. And while we're on the subject of enemies, I was also surprised that Hoyo managed to create an enemy type that I hate fighting even more than the Electrolectors. Enemies which suck away your energy are the bane of Genshin's combat system, and the Wayob manifestations take this to the extreme. I dread the day they're included in the Abyss, or of course, the Imaginarium Theatre. On the flip side, I love what they've done with the local legends. I've saved many of them for a rainy day, and it sounds like some may end up being a little frustrating to fight, but in general, the idea and the implementation are fantastic. I loved the local legends when they first showed up in Fontaine, but they really took them to the next level here. Each legend has some unique mechanic and 3 achievements to aim for, each with different challenges. It feels a bit of a shame that these aren't repeatable content, but beyond that minor downside, they're great. More of the same, please. The traversal methods though, up until now every new region felt a little more fun to explore than the last, and in some ways I'm a little surprised that Natlan has bucked that trend. The new regions do have the same kinds of traversal mechanics we've come to expect, but to use the Natlan ones, you need to either indwell a saurian or use a character from the new region. When it became clear that Natlan's character's focus would be movement mechanics, I had an inkling that this would happen, but it's more noticeable than I expected. For example, take the zipline mechanic, which has been through many different variations across the regions. Inazumas are annoying to use, you need an Electrograna, and the movement is finicky, so you often find yourself zipping out of range of the next target. Sumerus require Dendro character to activate and have some flaws in how they handle camera movement, but feel like a decent improvement. Fontaines are much more convenient, but you can't cancel them, which is irritating if you accidentally activate a longer one. The ones in Chenyu Vale are perfection, easy to activate and flexible, and they give you a lot of control and feel fantastic. I hope that all future regions would build on them. Instead, Natlans are a mix of Sumeru zipline style movement and Inazuma or Sumeru style activation. This is a pretty minor issue, and it's clearly intended to sell the Natlan characters. The saurians are fun, but it is annoying how cumbersome they feel when they are not performing their special move. Tracking down the nearest one and then lumbering back to the spot you wanted to use them feels like a step backwards. It's like Electrograna all over again, except now you walk at half the speed when you've got one. Even for someone who has all the Natlan characters, it's still a downside. Now you either need an exploration team, which only includes those characters, or you're going to be forever switching between teams. To be clear, this is a very minor complaint, and I've actually loved using these mechanics. It's just something which has stood out to me compared to how much else has felt like a clear improvement. And while we're thinking about traversal, Phlogiston makes a bigger difference than I had expected, and this is not a good thing. When you're zooming around Natlan, it's easy to keep your Phlogiston bar full, which means you can use the Natlan character's traversal mechanics at all times. This makes them feel fantastic, and it's easy to get used to it. However, this has a downside. The first time I brought Molani out in the Abyss, it really threw me off just how bad she felt. The rotations I had been using were no longer possible, and she felt like a completely different character. Even though I was expecting her to feel different when used in other regions, it was much more stark than I had anticipated. She's still fun, but it gives me pause. With this in mind, the character trial feels a little misleading. You don't quite get an accurate picture of how they'll feel in the 90% of the game where you won't have access to this extra resource. I'm still happy with the Natlan characters overall. I just kinda wish that the Phlogiston hadn't been included, so we wouldn't have that jarring experience when using them outside their home region. For the most part, I really enjoyed Natlan's Archon quest so far. The pacing has been good, and I felt like the story was engaging despite it feeling kinda lower stakes than what I'd come to expect based on previous regions. The big surprise for me is that the star of the show was Kachina. In previous regions, the 4 stars have generally been an afterthought. Ningguang is maybe a bit of an exception, but rumor has it she was originally a 5-star anyway, so she kinda gets a pass due to that. I fully expected this pattern to hold true in Natlan. After all, 5.0 saw the release of 2 new 5 stars, plus Mavuika gets a lot of screen time too. But instead, it really felt like Kachina's story, and honestly, I loved that. The setup really made me care for her, and her character arc was fantastic. It was also great to finally meet an Archon who welcomes us in and gives us some answers right from the start, though her position as an Archon is very different to the setup of previous regions. My only real complaint about the Archon quest is that the ending dragged a little bit, but again, that's just a minor annoyance and is par for the course in Genshin. A major complaint I had in the past, particularly in Sumeru, was that much of the exploration was gated behind long, tedious quests. Fontaine was much better for this, and Natlan has been fantastic so far. The world is open and inviting, and almost everything you can see is accessible with little forward planning. The parts which are quest-specific tend to be tucked away, and usually the quests for each location trigger the moment you try to explore those hidden corners, leading to a great experience overall. One exception to this is the floating islands. I had wondered how to get to them long before I found the right questline, but in this case it worked for me just as well. They were a tantalizing hint far up in the sky, which made me want to go find out how to get there, a far cry from the endless locked doors of Sumeru. I'm glad they found a balance here, and cater so well to both people who want the guided quests and those who want the unguided exploration. One really welcome surprise, though, is what I'll call the Ambient world quests. Genshin's storytelling tends to be pretty heavy-handed, with lots of dialogue and constant markers on the map pointing you to whatever it is you need to do next. Over time, they've started adding little flourishes, which are more subtle, but in Natlan they really took it to the next level. The best so far is an area where you stumble across some groups of Fatui guarding caged saurians. After you beat them, you can't unlock the cages. Instead, if you venture further into the chasm, you find more saurians, some caged, some unconscious, and eventually making your way into a cave system containing a secret base. Cue layers of puzzle solving and several fights until eventually you shut down the Fatui's machinery and rescue the captured saurians, all without a single word of dialogue. I loved this so much. It's such a big step up in Genshin's open world quest design that I really should do a video exploring how it's so different and why it works so much better for many people than the traditional quest setup. This has also been a pattern in smaller pieces of content throughout Natlan. My favorite so far echoes the captured saurian story with even more environmental storytelling. You rescue a baby saurian from a crashed wagon and escort it back to its nest, fighting off a couple of waves of enemies along the way. These kinds of things were so rare in Genshin before Natlan. I'm so happy to see them do such a great job with it. Natlan also brought a ton of quality of life upgrades, and many of them have surprised me. Several of them have been way more useful than I'd expected when they were first announced. Marking the regional specialties on the map is fantastic and just saves so much time. Artifact salvaging has made my life so much easier as someone who was previously always bumping up against the inventory size limit. Or even the quest warning when you're going to be locked in for a while, or that you're about to go into an important battle so you might want to change your team team. Actually seeing these in-game was honestly such a relief. And if the community's research is correct, the capturing radiance mechanic added to the wishing system is way better than originally thought. Instead of a flat 5% increase in your chances, people suspect that the chance of triggering it drastically increases with each lost 50-50, and it's actually more of a guarantee that even the most unlucky of us can only ever lose their 50-50 2 or 3 times in a row. If that's true, then it's a much better change than it would have been otherwise. On the other hand, a couple of others that I had been really excited for ended up being a little underwhelming. I had long hoped for a new world level, one aimed at those of us whose characters are way too powerful for the overworld now, and who want to go back to those early days when fights against ruin guards was a true challenge. I still hope they'll let us crank up the difficulty someday, but sadly, world level 9 is not the answer there. I'm glad it exists. Farming for boss materials is so much better when you're guaranteed 3 drops per time, but aside from that, it wasn't what I'd hoped for. And sadly, the Imaginarium Theatre updates were also underwhelming. Even though I enjoyed the game mode a lot, I really hoped that the new buff mechanic would make it feel more like your teams get more powerful as you progress through each round, but I at least felt no noticeable difference. Despite enjoying the challenge of constructing odd teams and making them work together, I really wish we could just copy-paste the elusive realm from Wuwa into Genshin. And sadly, one important update was far worse than I had feared. When they announced the artifact transmuter, I was a little concerned. My luck with rolling artifacts is atrocious, and so far almost every time I've had a promising artifact with good substats, it rolls into the worst possible stat. Just look at this Pyro Goblet, for example. I knew the elixirs used to power the transmuter would be rare, but I was at least expecting to get 1 or 2 from major events as well. Instead, we get 1 from the battle pass, 1 each from the 3 tribes, and you can waste several leveled artifacts worth of EXP by converting them into an elixir once per patch. If this is what they're aiming for, 4 or so elixirs per patch, allowing us to craft 1 goblet each time, then with the terrible RNG of the substats, I'm pretty sure I'm going to hate this whole thing. And also, I'll forever be sad that I can no longer do bounties and requests in previous regions for a little extra mora each week. Not cool, Hoyo. So far, Natlan has lived up to my expectations. Once again, Hoyo have managed to raise the bar and really suck me into a new region right from day one. But at the same time, feels a little different. For the most part, the positive changes have been significant, while the negative ones have been minor, so I'm very happy with this trend overall. There's 1 or 2 pieces which really do need some significant improvements, but there's many which deserve a lot of praise. Let's hope to see more of the same. Until next time!